Morning, everyone. Good to see everybody. I'd like to call this meeting to order. We'll do the Pledge of Allegiance first. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Commissioner Kaylee.
Roll call, is this on? Chairman Glick. Vice Chairman Yankee. Ron Cayley, Secretary, is here. Commissioner Anselmi Dalton. Commissioner Choma. Commissioner Craig. Commissioner Cott. Here. Austin. Is he
Here
on?
by phone.
Thank you. Commissioner Little. Here. Commissioner Suker. We have four.
Number 4 is the approval of minutes. November 8th, 2021. Water Development Commission Workshop.
I'd move to approve the minutes from November 8th.
Approve the minutes for November 8th by Commissioner Anselmi Dalton and then seconded by Commissioner Kaylee. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Minutes are approved. Okay, approval of minutes for November 9th and 10th, 2021, Wyoming Water Development Commission Select Water Joint Meeting. Move to approve by Commissioner Kaylee, seconded by Commissioner Craig. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Minutes have been approved for November 9th through the 10th. Director Gebhardt.
We'll do a couple of closeout memos. We've got 3 closeout memos for you today. The first one is the Cody Water Master Plan Level 1. The next one is the Lander Test Well Study Level 2, Phase 2. And then the final one is the Pinedale Water Master Plan Level 1. Starting with Cody Water Master Plan, I'll turn it over to Chase Tavelli.
Mr. Chair. Good morning. My name's Chase Tavelli. I'm here to present the closeout memo for the Cody Water Master Plan Level 1 study. The sponsor was the City of Cody. We had an initial appropriation of $205,000. Excuse me. The consultant was Engineering Associates. The original contract amount was for $204,500. Final contract amount, $184,437 and $31 for some savings. The majority of that savings was a discretionary task that was not used. The City of Cody operates 2 water distribution systems. One is raw water and one is treated water. The raw water system feeds about 1/3 of the city. Their last master plan on their raw water system was in 1996, and the last for the treated was 2009. So they were definitely ready for updates. This is a standard master plan for both the treated and raw water systems, updating existing GIS, hydraulic models, population projections, and water use, and to evaluate both systems to provide an engineering recommendation for future projects, costs to upgrade system components. It was determined that the city is not in need of a follow-up level 2 or any level 3 projects. They are just about finished with all of the level 3 projects from their first master plan. There are, however, as you know, with our master plans, we do identify projects that are not Water Development Commission eligible eligible costs. So the treated water system, if you look, the big line item for the treated water is $41,600,000 for undersized water lines in the city's distribution system. The treated raw water system, they are looking to expand that. So that's interesting decision that they made. The treated water system does subsidize the raw water system right now, but they're looking to change that, but they are looking to expand. And then there's the rest of the findings from the study there in bullets. There was a public report presentation on September 28th of 21 at the Cody City Hall. Final report and executive summaries are online. The water development off recommendation based on the findings of the study. At this time, there is not an immediate need for a level 2 study nor an immediate need for any level 3 projects.
Any questions or comments? Mr. Kaylee,
I move acceptance of the Cody Water Master Plan Level 1 project report as being complete, and further, the WWDC makes the following findings relative to this project. That the commission recommend proceeding to the next level of project development upon the submittal of an appropriate funding application by the sponsor.
motion made by Commissioner Kaylee, seconded by Commissioner Yankee. I don't know why I forgot that. Sorry. He was my teacher back in high school.
We tried to forget it.
Yeah, I was trying to forget. Sorry. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Director
Chairman, the
Gephardt.
next closeout memo is the Lander Test Well Study Level 2 Phase 2 under tab P as in pony in your notebook, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Keith Clary.
Mr. Chairman, good morning to all. This is the closeout for Lander Test Well Level 2 Phase 2. The sponsor was the city of Lander, and the first phase was closed out on November 5th, 2020 by Kevin Boyce. And the appropriation was 2.34 million in the 2018 session. And the consultant was Wyoming Groundwater LLC. The original contract amount was $2,335,000. The final contract amount was $741,397.91. So that means a contract savings of $1,593,602.09. The city of Lander was identified a need to possibly to look into ground some kind of additional water rights, and so a high priority was to find that additional water. This level 2 feasibility study was commenced in July 2018 and investigated those potential water supplies. Aquifers for the area were identified as Paleozoic aquifers for a deep well, 3,000 to 4,000 feet deep, and then also various alluvial aquifers in the area. And a report came out in April 2019. An alluvial aquifer well field was selected as the preferred alternative. Test drilling was conducted in late 2019, and then the production wells were 6 production-sized alluvial wells were drilled and completed in August, September 2020. And they potentially could serve as a 2 million gallons per day additional water supply to the city of Lander. The level 2 phase 1 report was completed in October 2020 to accompany the city's 2021 level 3 funding application for construction of the well field connecting it to the city system. The level 2 phase 2 report was completed recently here in October 2021. The phase 1 report covered Werther Meadow Reservoir, groundwater resources review, alluvial aquifer test, wells, conceptual well design, well field cost estimate, well field operation and management. Under the phase 2, which is the recent report here, the following items were conducted. 4 state engineer's office permits for municipal wells were obtained from the office. Hydraulic connections were investigated between the well field and the Papaja River, and little impact is going to be on the river system. 2 of these 6 wells that were constructed are production size, but they're being currently used as monitoring wells by the Lander water treatment plant. They could be converted to full municipal supply wells in the future if there's a need. Other topics investigated include the impact of the new alluvial aquifer groundwater to the existing water quality in the city of Lander's system. And it was concluded that this effect would be very minimal. A wellhead protection, aquifer protection for the new well field. A preliminary investigation was conducted of the old 1942 Lander number 1 well. It's 3,200 feet deep. The casing's in pretty poor shape. Currently it's a flowing well, and Game and Fish likes to have the water from the flowing well where it's leaking out onto the surface for the wildlife in the area. So that's probably, it's something they could do in the future if they wanted to mess with it, but recomplete it or something, but they'd have to put a casing and screen into it because the current condition is pretty poor. An analysis was conducted also of the Rainy Collector well, which is a central caisson with radiating horizontal laterals into the alluvial aquifer. And that looks like it could be potential for future development of the alluvial aquifer where the current wells are. And the level 2 study, phase 2, was completed just last month, about a month ago. So everything was in. The public hearing was held. The reports and executive summary are in line, both volume 1 and volume 2. And the recommendation from the Water Development Office is we recommend this closeout memo to complete the project, recommend accepting this closeout memo to complete the project and terminating the Lander test well level 2 phase 2 study. The Lander level 3 construction project from the level 2 phase 1 study was appropriated and funded in 2021. So there's the proposed motion there. So I'm open for questions.
Have any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, I move acceptance of the Lander Test Well Level 2 Phase 2 Study Project Report as being complete. And further, the Wyoming Water Development Commission makes the following findings relative to this project. That the commission recommend terminating further consideration of this project.
As stated on the page by Commissioner Yankee, seconded by Commissioner Insomni Dalton. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Thank you.
Chairman, the final closeout memo, the Pinedale Water Master Plan Level 1, and I'll turn it back over to Chase.
Mr. Chair. This is the closeout memo for the Pinedale Water Master Plan Level 1 study. The sponsor was the town of Pinedale. There was an appropriation of $172,000. Our contract was with Forsgren Associates Incorporated. The original contract amount was $171,218, and the final contract amount was $159,939.45. Again, a pretty decent contract savings amount, and that was a discretionary task that was not completely utilized. This was kind of an interesting beginning to this study. In August of 2018, there was a fecal coliform spike in their raw water. And the EPA said that they were going to have to implement filtration within the next 18 months, which is virtually impossible. Conduct a watershed study to determine the source, or develop an alternative source of water. We had meetings with the town. We went up and visited them and determined that they came in and asked for an alternate source study. And we determined, since their last master plan was in 2009 and they had implemented most of the recommendations, that we go ahead and update their master plan, do another master plan, and do an alternate source, along with the other standard things that we do in our master plans. It was determined that there's no need for level 2 or any immediate level 3 construction. We did look at an alternate source. Groundwater was the choice, but it was found to be very expensive and not feasible. We were looking at a 23 well field, 3 miles southwest from town. Would have required a 3-mile transmission line, an 800,000 gallon storage tank, and a pump station. So it was actually going to be more expensive than implementing treatment, filtration at the treatment plant. They do have water loss issues in Pinedale, but a lot of that is bleeders. So there was a recommendation that they start monitoring their bleeders and seeing how much water they are, in fact, leaking or using, as well as to go ahead and do a water loss program on the rest of their system. In case there is a need for filtration in the future, we looked at a treatment plant addition. That's a $12,600,000 venture. And if they were to do that, the town could use a storage tank up at their treatment plant, which would serve both sides of their town. They have 2 main transmissions. They don't need it now. It would be more of a luxury, but if they did put in this treatment plant, they would probably put in a tank at the same time. The public presentation was August 23rd of 21 at the Sublette County Public Library. The report and executive summaries are online, and based on the findings of the study, at this time, there is not an immediate need for a level 2 study, nor an immediate need for any level 3 projects.
Any comments or questions? Commissioner Zalmudon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chase, what happened with the fact that they had all these problems with the E. coli? How did that get solved?
Question I meant. It was found to be laboratory error. So I believe there were some issues with that, and between the lab and Pinedale, and it was resolved. I'm not sure how it was resolved legally, but yeah, there was a laboratory error.
There comments or questions?
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion. I move acceptance of the Pinedale Water Master Plan Level 1 project report as being complete, and further, the WWDC make the following findings relative to this project: that the commission recommend proceeding to the next level of project development upon submittal of an appropriate funding application by the sponsor.
Made by Commissioner Cott, seconded by Commissioner Choma. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Thanks. Director Gebhardt.
Chairman, the next item on the agenda is a couple of groundwater exploration grant contracts. Judge Mosier will be presenting these. The first one is the Happy Valley Water and Improvement District. And the recommendation is under tab R in the notebook, and then the contract that is for your consideration for approval is under tab S. And we'll also have the Town of Cokeville groundwater grant project, and those are under tabs T and U. And I will turn it over to George.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. George Mosier with the Water Development Office. Brandon stole a little bit of my thunder by saying we've got two projects to tee off here. As a reminder, the groundwater grant program has enabling legislation which sets aside a balance that we can use to appropriate at up to 75% for groundwater exploration grant projects. The current project balance for that account is roughly $1.5 million. The first project to present today is the Happy Valley application. It's an application that kind of piggybacks on a level 2 study. You may remember from October that Barry Lawrence with our office presented a closeout memo. One of the findings from that level 2 study was that Happy Valley and the associated Osmond Water District should evaluate some options maybe for combining and finding alternate sources of supply. With me today here is Mark Erickson to represent Happy Valley. Happy Valley on their own has brought this application in front of you today. It is to try to find an alluvial source that's near the district. They currently rely on a couple of springs that are located east of the district and in a canyon. The pipeline that feeds their system is aging, and so one of the ideas is to evaluate the options for an alluvial well that would be located closer to their infrastructure, get away from some of the aging transmission line problems that they have, and then also provide a tool that they might be able to use in order to approach neighboring Osmond for discussions about combining, if they can kind of put together several pieces of infrastructure that would serve a larger system that might be advantageous. Happy Valley itself has roughly 33 taps that supply within the system. They would potentially be looking at combining with another 60 or 70 taps within Osmond if this could work out in a favorable way. The well that they are proposing is approximately 400 feet deep. It'll be located in alluvial material. The goal would be to drill down, set some surface casing, drill down a little bit further with a pilot hole and evaluate how much permeable material might be there in order to complete the final design. The total project cost associated with this is $398,000. At a 75% grant, that would be $298,500. If you all have any questions, I can try my best to answer them, or also Happy Valley might be able to answer them.
Any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, this may be a question for the project proponent. Just how are they tying in with the Osmond system? Just maybe explain that a little bit, their relationship with Osmond and how this may tie in with Osmond.
Pipelines run parallel to each other, within 6 foot of each other. Their system's worn out. They've got to do something. They're trying to become a district. We've approached them. They're willing to join us. If we can get this well going, we can kind of increase a viable system for both of us for the future.
And just one more question is, so this well would be sized, would produce enough water for both systems, both Osmond and Happy Valley, is that correct? Yeah.
Mr. Chair, it seems to me like this well probably represents a piece to the puzzle, not that one well is necessarily going to serve everything. Osmond's spring source has a little bit higher flow rate. So it may be that, combining a few of those strategic pieces helps them out. To speak a little bit also, Mr. Chair, to a question that I thought I was picking up there, the intent is to locate this well very close to the existing transmission and distribution system so that we can minimize the costs that might be necessary on the tail end for tying this well into the system. Thank you.
For transmission.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, as I listen to this application and consider it, one of the things that strikes me is this is a version of regionalization. And that is a priority of our program, is to regionalize these systems when we can. So there is that component of this as well.
Other questions or comments?
Here. Mr. Erickson, I saw that you were talking about in the future having a rate increase. Any idea when you might be looking at that rate increase?
We've already got the tax base as of November. We finally have money in our account, because taking it from the private that own it to us, we've had a few problems, and we haven't quite got that done yet. So we've actually doubled it there, but they're still charging their rates to the private sector until we get that taken over. Then that'll give us that extra. But we went like 25 a month or 300 a year for each one of the 33 that's on there. And we are getting that money now. So we're working toward obtaining the system somehow. And if we can get together on that, it'll actually double what we were taking in.
Follow up on the question about the water fees. I also noticed that currently the water use is not being metered. Are there plans in the future to meter the use of the water?
Other questions or comments?
Chairman, I will move we accept the Happy Valley water well contract for ground exploration.
It was moved to accept by Commissioner Little, seconded by Commissioner Insomni Dalton. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Can you hear Senator, excuse me, Commissioner Lawson on the phone when he? Oh, okay, all right, thanks. So it was moved to approve.
And is there a final determination on that, sir?
To approve the Happy Valley water well. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time.
Next, we have for your consideration an application from Cokeville. This application is remarkably similar, but has some distinct little differences. If I could, I'd like to invite Demont Grandy from Cokeville and also Ben Jordan from Weston Engineering. They are both here to speak in person should there be any questions.
Yeah, introduce yourself.
My name's Demont Grandy. I've been a councilman for the town of Cokeville for about going on 8 years come December. I'm over the water and sewer department for town of Cokeville because that's my expertise. As many of you know, I worked for NRCS for 37 years. Did a lot of water projects for the local ranchers in Lincoln County and Teton County. So that's why I've had this job for 8 years.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I'm Ben Jordan with Weston Engineering.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair and members of the commission, today, the application in front of you is for a new well for the town of Cokeville. The town of Cokeville currently uses 2 wells that are located about 3 miles east of town. The goal here is to drill a new well in alluvial material closer to town, eliminating some of the transmission line problems and providing an alternate source of supply for them. This project kind of started because some sampling indicated that one of the Cokeville wells may be at risk for being under the influence of surface water. So if anyone is having a moment of deja vu, you may recall that Cokeville already has an approved groundwater grant application. Cokeville has not spent any money out of that particular grant. The reason that we're here today is that the original grant, which was approved in 2020, was going to drill a well that would be located really close to the existing 2 wells. And that well would have provided water into the existing transmission main. What Cokeville has done in the meantime is stepped back for a second to decide whether that was truly the best option to alleviate some of their concerns. And they have now an application that would be an alluvial well close and actually in town, just west of the railroad tracks. And that would get them away from some of the aging transmission line problems. The alluvial aquifer in the area is quite thick and known to be very productive. So there's, there's not this up in the air or dilemma as to whether there will be a reasonable source of supply, where there might be some concerns for the locations where their existing 2 wells are located. We're expecting a well that would be about 350 feet deep. It's probably only 20 or perhaps 25 feet to water in that area, pretty shallow groundwater, pretty thick and productive aquifer. And the total project cost for this is anticipated to be just shy of $370,000. The number exactly is $368,690. At a 75% grant, the proposed project budget would be $276,525. The existing groundwater grant project was funded at $209,000. What we are seeing, and just to kind of communicate cost differences for a second, is I'm sure you all are aware, and we've been hearing over time, that construction costs are just skyrocketing. So costs associated with even mobilizing drilling crews and construction materials are definitely increasing, and that's represented here. The difference in the cost, should we proceed forward under this new contract, is $67,525.
Have any questions or comments? Commissioner Cox.
Mr. Chairman, just a question for the project proponents. It seemed like the old well was in danger from surface contamination, and I assume that this new location has protections against that. Just talk to that a little bit.
I'll let Ben Jordan, the town of Cokeville's hired Forsgren Engineering, and they have subcontracted with Ben to do the geology, and he's got the more understanding than any of us on that.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. In short, we're proposing to have this well depth significantly greater than the other area wells. There are other high production wells, and we anticipate there may be some resistance. Demont actually has communicated with some of those well owners. It is a small community. The alluvial materials will have sufficient surface casing here, and we'll be producing from greater depths, which provide for that protection. As an additional measure, we actually did go collect water samples from one of the area alluvial wells there at the Cokeville Elementary to make sure that nitrate concentrations are not an issue. And the nitrates came in very low for that well that's been in existence and in use for a couple of decades. So yes, we're very cognizant of water quality issues.
Any other comments or questions?
So are we, if we approve this exploration or groundwater exploration grant, do we then terminate the old contract? Is that what we're looking at doing?
Yes, sir. That would be the goal here. If I may explain a little bit further, I believe that Cokeville at the application process was a little bit concerned that they not, give up the 209 that they already had secured and then be left in the lurch with potentially no project funding. So my understanding and the reason that we have held off on any kind of bills or using any of that 209 is to essentially substitute this new project for the old one.
There comments or questions? So that I got a question for you, Director Gephardt. Is that there's not a way to do a modification?
Yeah, we wrestled with that. We could amend the current contract. We chose to bring it this way just to tell the body that there were significant changes. And we preferred this route just to make you aware of what was going on rather than try to amend it. And the amendment would be significantly different projects. So that's the reason we chose to bring as a new project to replace the old.
Do we have to first one prior to, or how does that work?
I think the preference of Cokeville is to make sure that this one is approved before they terminate the old one. I think that's what George was getting at, so that they at least have something. But if we approve this, then we can still just dissolve the other contract.
Okay, thanks.
Question. What their original SLIB funding that they got on it, was that for that first project? Will that be able to move to the second project?
Yes, the slip funding will go for a different aspect. And you can correct me, Ben, but the slip funding, there's other infrastructure we're gonna need besides just that well. We're gonna have to move our whole, all of our material, not materials, our sheds and everything down to the Cokeville, near the Cokeville warehouse. And we're gonna have to have connection pipes to our pipeline that exists through town. So there's a lot of other expenses involved. That was the reason why I went after the slip money. Isn't that what you?
That is
understand?
correct.
So
The SLID money does allow for connection to the existing infrastructure regardless of the location.
Other comments or questions? I hear a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the Cokeville number 4 well project.
It was motion was made to approve by Commissioner Choma and seconded by Commissioner Yankee. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Gephardt, do we just we wait till after the legislature approves and then we can make sure that then it dissolves the other project? Is that how that works?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, in our contracts, we have the ability to terminate at any time. And I believe that this termination will be agreed to by both the Water Development and by Cokeville. So that is something that the office has the authority to do, is to terminate that contract. So we can do that.
Director Gebhardt, the construction, was a project contract amendment.
This is a contract amendment for the Middle Piney Dam Reconstruction Project. And this is located under tab V, will be the memorandum explaining it. And then under tab W is the contract for your consideration, the contract amendment, excuse me, for your consideration. And because I've already messed this up once yesterday, I'm going to turn it over to Jason so he can present this correctly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Jason Mead virtually. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay. So as Brandon mentioned, this is, or in front of you today for your consideration, is Amendment 13 with Stantec and their contract for the Middle Piney Reservoir project. Stantec has been our engineering consultant on this project since 2006, actually. We've amended their contract over time from the feasibility studies through the design, even the NEPA, the design, and now the construction management, hence so many amendments. But if you recall, back at our August meeting up in Douglas, we had a discussion about Middle Piney Reservoir in regards to utilizing Account 3 sponsor contingency funds. And the reason for that is we saw a list of potential change orders and project amendments as we were working through that project with NW Construction, who's the actual contractor out on site. They've been working on this project since 2018. Again, this is a high elevation project, so we've got short construction seasons, hence the reason for multi-year construction. But if you recall, and you guys approved at the time, $925,000 out of the sponsor contingency fund. And part of the discussion that we had in August was the dewatering efforts that we were seeing during construction and how those were exceeding expectations. And that brought into question whether the designed seepage collection and drainage system was going to be sized appropriately for post-construction operations. And so this summer, after our August meeting, that work was completed by Stantec, our engineer. They analyzed that, they put together designs, worked with the Forest Service out on site to help them understand what we were going to be doing, and then oversaw the construction. And then a contractor actually installed several hundred feet of 24-inch drain pipe and sand and gravel filters to get that completed. So this request today is simply to recognize that effort so we can compensate Stantec for their work during that time in the amount of $25,000. With that, I would ask if there are any questions.
Questions or comments for Jason? Do we need to have any action on this? Okay. So the action would be to increase by 25,000, is that correct?
That's correct.
Mr. Chair, I got a quick question. Is there anybody from Stantec on the line or here today?
Mr. Chairman, I do believe we have Morgan Wardell from Stantec available.
Yeah, yep. This is Morgan Wardell with Stantec, the current project manager on the project. So if you do have any questions for us, I'd be happy to answer those or get you the information you need.
Mr. Wardell, I just was wondering, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I think Jason summarized it pretty well. The amendment we're asking for, again, is just the money to cover the design and evaluation of that additional drainage system due to the changed ground conditions and additional seepage at the reservoir. We carefully tracked hours and time to make sure that we were keeping our time close to or under our estimate that we had given back at the August 3rd meeting. But yes, we were able to get through design, coordination with the Forest Service, and then construction oversight and administration for this particular feature on the embankment.
Chairman, I would like to make a motion.
Would like to ask a question before the motion. Is that
Okay,
acceptable?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Craig,
I'm pretty new to this commission, but I believe nearly every meeting I have attended, there's been discussion about this groundwater seepage problem on this project. So I have a question for the engineer regarding the latest drainage that's been installed. What are your feelings? Will this resolve the problem so the work can now be completed?
This is, yeah, so to answer your question, this is one component of our overall groundwater control system within this embankment design. So the purpose of these drains along the downstream side and abutments are to alleviate water pressure buildup along the downstream toe and abutments of the embankment. But these are just one component. The other component is a larger grouting and ground improvement component within the core of the embankment itself. And so what's been undertaken here is an evaluation to make sure, A, given the seepage we've seen, that the drainage system installed is adequate so that we don't have the issue of completing the embankment and then finding we have to remove and replace material to, again, improve drainage. We wanted to catch it while we had the embankment open and the groundwater exposed. Hence the additional design for this larger drain system. We went back with the knowledge of what we had with, existing seepage rates and reevaluated the proposed design, and then determined at that point it would be prudent to add this additional drainage system. So this pipe component is to handle one part of the groundwater seepage. The remaining work that we are currently undertaking is to evaluate that grout curtain. We have additional monitoring wells and piezometers on the site to evaluate groundwater activity. Those went in last October. They'll be monitored all through the winter, through the spring and summer, and that will help guide our final grouting program to ensure that we're protecting that embankment safety and that we've got the grouting covering any areas where we may still have potential for seepage through the geology of the site.
did that answer your question? Your mic.
I guess I still have a little bit of concern. It sounds to me like some of the work that was done might have as much to do with monitoring as it does with remediation. And this Middle Piney project has come up at every meeting I've been to for the last year, and it's always been this groundwater issue. So my real question that I guess maybe no one knows is if the work that's been done or is planned to still be done will actually solve the problem.
Yes, so to address that, our current work right now, like I had said, this amendment that we're talking about right now was for the downstream and abutment drainage system. We currently are monitoring and evaluating the grouting program. We have been since the start of construction. I took over as PM on this last summer and have gone through quite a bit of the historic data. We've gone through a few rounds of grouting on this embankment, and from the on-site testing, we have noticed that yes, we're reducing permeability, working toward control of that groundwater for protection of the embankment and storage. The hard part with this site is, as you may be familiar, you've heard several discussions. The geology of this site with the landslide on the abutment is rather difficult to dial in. And so we've been undergoing additional testing and monitoring to make sure that whatever we put into the ground in terms of grouting and remediation, addresses the concerns of that additional groundwater seepage. And so that we don't reach final completion and then determine we have a problem. We want to make sure that we're addressing these problems as construction continues. Hence the additional monitoring that we've put in, the additional groundwater piezometers. We have more wells to go in yet this spring, additional subsurface testing to help us evaluate the grouting program. And then with that, we'll be finalizing the grouting and revising plans and specifications with the contractor to make sure that our grouting efforts are targeted and giving us the desired performance we need for this embankment.
Mr. Chairman, Morgan, as I hear this conversation, one of the things that I think might help explain it is the grouting effort, and this is in the form of a question.
Mhm.
The grouting effort is for dam safety concerns and minimize seepage losses out of the reservoir. There is still additional groundwater from other areas that come into underneath this dam. But the grouting is for the dam safety to ensure that the embankment is stable. And then the drain system is to collect additional water sufficiently that it doesn't impact the dam safety. First of all, is that correct? And do you want to maybe expand on that? I think that might help explain what we're trying to accomplish.
Yes, no, that's a correct summary. The landslide itself, we do have groundwater flow from multiple directions. The grouting is to target the embankment and the reservoir, and this additional subsurface drainage system is to pick up additional runoff or groundwater flow near at the abutments in the downstream toe, again, to alleviate that pressure on the fill. So it is, yes, a multi-component groundwater control system.
And I may add that it seems that some of this groundwater that we're collecting in the drain system is not necessarily coming through the dam, but coming on the backside, and we're keeping it from getting into the dam by this drainage system. Does that help answer your question?
Yes, that helps. I had a little bit of an understanding of that and was, I'm glad you helped to clarify that, but I did pick up that the grouting was more from the water behind the dam and the reservoir side. My concern really is that obviously there's a groundwater issue not related to the dam, and it seems like we have discussed this quite a bit. And my question for the engineer, and it's really probably not a question that can be answered, is whether or not this work that's been done or is planned to be done for the water that is coming in from the slide itself, it will be solved with what they're doing or are planning to do. And I have just kind of picked up, reading between the lines, that the question can't be answered at this point.
Mr. Chairman, I would just add that that water is always going to be coming from that landslide material. So the efforts that the engineer is going through is to be able to deal with those for the future of the project. And I think what they've put in, I think will be sufficient to handle that. It's not to get rid of it. It's how do we deal with it now that we know it's there?
Yeah, I always say that pipelines make water smart by telling it where to go. And I think that's the concept here, is there's always going to be water on the downstream side. It's just to get it out of the way and not impact the dam. So what that quantity is, they've done a lot of work, and the resizing of the drain system is to accommodate what they think is the additional flow on the backside.
To your question, Commissioner Craig. Okay, thank you. So do we need action on this for the additional, what is it, 25,000, right?
Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman, the action is to approve Amendment 13 to the contract.
Okay.
Chairman, I'd like to make that motion. I'd like to move that we approve Amendment 13 to the Middle Piney Reservoir Project.
Motion made by Commissioner Cott to approve, seconded by Commissioner Little. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Thank you. Gephardt, let's see, preparation for 2020 legislature omnibus bill.
Chairman, the action for this is to approve the omnibus water bill for planning. And this is under tab XYZ. And when you get to that tab, the first page is what we call the blue sheet. And what this spreadsheet shows is, and I'll show you in the bill in a second, but each section of this spreadsheet corresponds to a section in the planning bill. It will give you the page number and project, location, what account it is coming from, and then a very brief description of what the project is. So under this first block in the planning bill, we've got the Clarks Fork Upper Shoshone Watershed Study, the Dayton Water Master Plan, Riverton Regional Water Master Plan, and the UW Water Research Program. You'll notice that the Water Research Program has a to be determined amount. This was the discussion that we had yesterday where you were presented with the advisory committee, the selection team's recommendation to the commission. And that is under tab B if we want to go back to it, but we can look at the bill just to see the structure of how this is put up. So on the first page of the bill, describes the bill name that's sponsored by Select Water Committee, provides a description for what the bill does. And then at the bottom of page 1 on line 13, this is the authorized level 1 and level 2 studies. And then on the next page is section 1. So section 1 of the bill talks about the level 1 reconnaissance studies for new development. This is water development account 1 projects for level 1 reconnaissance studies. I'll point out on line 13 of page 2, actually starts on line 12. This identifies the reversion date for any unobligated and unexpended funds that occur at the time of July 1st, 2025. They revert back to water development account 1. And then starting on line 18, this identifies the projects. These are the same projects that were in the first block of your blue sheet spreadsheet. So again, the projects for new development on the level 1 reconnaissance are the Clarks Fork Upper Shoshone Watershed Study, the Dayton Water Master Plan, the Riverton Regional Water Master Plan, and then the UW. Now to have a discussion on the UW Water Research Program, and then we would insert that a dollar amount depending on what this commission decides to water for the UW Water Research Program. And to help with that conversation, I direct you back to tab B of the notebook. And I think we can go to the very last page of that. And this is the table that shows the ranking order of the projects. So the highest ranking project under tier 1 is project D, B, and A in that order. Tier 2 is project C, F, and E. And I will mention that Mr. Greg Kerr is still here. If we have questions for him related to any of these projects, he can better answer them than I could. But your decision is which of these projects would you like to amend into the draft bill as it stands now?
I mean, Mr. Kerr, can you come up and introduce yourself?
Mr. Chairman, I'm Greg Kerr, Director of the Office of Water Programs at the University of Wyoming.
Yeah, anybody have any questions or comments over Commissioner Sami Dalton?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just asked, I guess, since we have Senator Hicks here with us, normally we fund about 300 to 400,000 for these projects. And if we did approve the top three, which was, two of them were studying sediment impacts at the Willwood Dam, and then the total projects for D, B, and A are probably about 500,000 or so. And I don't know, do we need to study both sediment impacts at the Willwood Dam, or is it sort of duplicative? And should we eliminate one? I just wonder how that is for you, Mr. Kerr, and then I guess asking Senator Hicks what he thinks of the approving all three.
Chairman. Yes, the rankings are only for your information, that as the committee went through, so their recommendation, I mean, if they had a recommendation to fund, certainly they'd recommend to fund all the projects, which we're limited on that. So typically between $300,000 and $400,000 is what we have in the past funded, you folks have. The two projects, first of all, the number one ranked project, as we had talked about yesterday, is critical information for the state and the Colorado River in looking at curtailment possibilities. The other two projects, if you recall, the Willwood Dam project has, and the sediment release that happened was, I believe, in about 2016. So since that time, working groups, which I believe there's been 3 working groups that have looked at different phases of the Willwood Dam sediment problem. So the two projects that are listed here, the two proposals, one, the first one listed looks mostly at, excuse me, I'm clogged up. Looks mostly at what we're doing for sediment watershed planning and restoration. That's what work group number 3 had looked at. So it's looking at possibilities of how could information gathered here look at other areas of the state, and how we could use that information to look at other watersheds, how we could plan for those watersheds in the sediment, and applying it to Willwood. The project then A, the third ranked project, looks at a different work group of dam operations mostly. And there's question within the committee of, should this possibly be looked at more in a project with looking at level 1 or level 2 project possibly, because it looks at cost estimates and different options for how to look at dam operation. Both of these are very important. They're very important to the Willwood, to the state, to the work groups, and they had a hard time determining how to rank those. So their recommendation does not necessarily say, we want to fund all 3 of these. It'd be nice, but the top 2 are probably more realistic for what we follow historically in our program.
Mr. Hicks, did you want to respond?
You know, Mr. Chairman, it's not likely to have an opinion on much of anything. You know, and I haven't had a chance to look at economic impact, curtailment, and demand management from Wyoming. When I read the proposal, I didn't see the terminology curtailment used as a technical statement of relevance. There's already been an ongoing estimation that I think it's presumptuous at this point in time to assume that would be my first.
research already leading us to a foregone conclusion, and I don't think come to a foregone conclusion. That's a concern. And then on the Billwood Dam, having spent the majority of my life up there, that the issues with Billwood Dam is that are pretty well defined. Without a detailed understanding. I looked through that test. No particular.
I must have lost him somehow.
Maybe in there, Mr. Chairman, but it's not.
I don't know. I guess I can start over.
Mr. Lawson, I think that we're just having some microphone difficulty. You're still on the meeting.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I don't have an opinion at this point in time, but those as being the top ranker give me a little bit of concern. I hope that answers your question.
You wanna,
Chair, I got a question for Senator Hicks. So where would you rank that number E in your opinion or select water opinion? Would you rank that number one? Correct. Do you think if we propose something like D, B, and E to be accepted, would those dollar amounts? I know that'd be a little over the 400,000 that we typically budget, but do you think it's something that would get through? Okay. So if we was to select those three, I think that'd push us closer to that $500,000 probably. Thank you.
Chairman? Just from, and thank you, Senator Hicks, for your perspective on these projects. Just, reading the university's summaries and having some personal information on some of these projects. I think, from my perspective, the curtailment and demand management on the Colorado River Basin is appropriate as a high priority, understanding the economics of that. There may be some shortfalls in the study, but I think the information gathered by that study could be very important. And I think the high resolution AV LiDAR, as the university pointed out, that's something that could be used statewide. It's a statewide tool. And I guess I have a question, and I very much being from Sweetwater County, where there has been some lithium and rare earth deposits and potential. I see that as very important. I guess I question whether this may not be duplicating efforts as pointed out by the university's evaluation. Is this going to duplicate efforts by other university programs? Or I guess I have another question is, how does this complement and dovetail into those programs? So that's my question on that. But I would be, if I had to make a motion, I would make a motion for B and D. And if there was money, sure, put E in there, but I'd want to know how that dovetails into the ongoing work that's being completed by the state. Thank you.
There are comments or questions? Did you want to respond, Mr. Kerr?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. First of all, the Project D proposal is, I think in the proposal itself, it talks about the current work and previous project that Senator Hicks mentioned about curtailment. And this is only to provide additional information on demand management. It doesn't say that Wyoming is going to be under demand management. It's providing information for the future if possibilities are there, and provides an economic aspect to this definitely if something did occur. So I think that's an important thing to note, is that it's not, stating we are having it. It's just stating what are the economic benefits or non-benefits of this. And the proposal B, if you look at the UAV-borne LiDAR, that provides a new technology to look at. It's not looking at collecting additional information on Willwood itself as far as a study. It's looking at how do we go about finding in different watersheds, how do we go about defining what that sediment load is, where it comes from, and how can we use best management practices possibly to alleviate that. So it's not really a study on Willwood Dam. It's more of a study and research on what are new methods that we can look at to help with this process.
Yeah. Any other comments or questions for Mr. Kerr or Director Gebhardt? I have a couple of questions myself. With that UAV-borne LiDAR, is that Is that the land off-site? I mean, within the watershed, or is that inside the water inside the dam? How does that?
It would be the watershed itself above the dam.
Okay. And this is pretty accurate, down to the centimeters or inches or what?
Apparently, I'm not that familiar with the exact process that they use, other than, they have UAV. I think they should put in their drones. It'd be more explanatory, but using drone technology.
Okay, and then, like on the economic impacts of curtailment and demand management, this is more of a preparedness. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the evaluation of critical mineral deposits, how does that tie into water?
Mr. Chairman, as Senator Hicks mentioned, this was and is an important issue in Wyoming and all over the country with looking at rare earth elements and minerals. What the committee looked at with this, where they were familiar with a research project through the University of Wyoming, through the School of Energy Resources, that will look at part of this in a broader scope rather than, in essence, it would seem like this was kind of a shotgun approach to coming up with information without maybe enough time or money, because sampling was involved in it, and maybe there wasn't enough money to go into a sampling program that would be meaningful and provide enough data to come up with information for us. So those are some of the reasons that it's not. We felt it was almost, were we wasting money overlapping projects with a broader, more well-funded project with the university than what this individual PI could do?
For your information, Commissioner Cox.
Mr. Chairman, and another issue on that was brought out in the report, and I just want to make it clear that, I'm very supportive of studying how we can support our state's economy and capitalize on our rare earth minerals and lithium deposits in the state. And and duplication, and make sure that at least, maybe it's not even duplication, but how can we work together? Another piece of that was water quality. The proposal as it was written, and I'm maybe didn't read something correctly, but it seemed like water quality is certainly an issue in lithium or rare earth, depending upon if you're taking these out of solution or not. I know in the Rock Springs uplift in the Lucite Hills, there was tremendous amounts of water being produced to develop this resource. And, certainly if that is going to be approved as a study, adding, water quality and water disposal as a part of the study would be very important.
Thank you for your comment. Is that for like produced water? I guess.
Mr. Chairman, yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
I'd like to discuss the proposals for the Wellwood Dam just briefly, and I'm not going to really try to discuss one or over the other, but one thing to keep in mind is we have a proposal in place right now for the Upper Shoshone and Clark's Fork watershed study. I think we might have some duplication going on here with what that study might show. This is a issue that has multiple sources of sediment that Wellwood Dam does. It's been mentioned that there's irrigation runoff, and that's true. It's really not proven what the largest source is, but we have several 100,000 acre watershed above that, clear up above the Buffalo Bill Reservoir itself, and in high water flows. and storm events, there's a significant amount of sediment that even comes through that dam and down the river. So I think the watershed study will find some conclusions that might be being duplicated here. I do believe it's really important to try to find out what can be done because of the economy of the area, the irrigation district that's affected. If there is determined that they have to curtail use on the project to deal with the sediment or whatever might come of it, I think it's important for the economy of the state as well to have some kind of studies that would help as a maybe be proactive in showing powers that be that we're working on this Willwood Dam thing. So I would not like to see those abandoned in the process. If something else is moved up the list, I still think it's important for something to be done with the Willwood Dam, but keeping in mind, we may be duplicating some of this with this Shoshone River and Clarks Fork watershed study.
Thank you. Anyone respond, Mr. Kerr?
Mr. Chairman, that was discussed during the deliberations and said that this particular project has worked with many of the agencies, a couple of the Clarks Fork Conservation District and the Department of Environmental Quality that's also involved in these studies that you're talking about. And so hopefully, and I do believe that they would be working in coordination with each other, not against each other.
As we discuss these things, that's one of the reasons I mentioned that duplication of effort. And maybe that's not, maybe that redundancy is important, but actually determining ways that those entities can work together, whether it's university or the engineering firm that is selected to do that Clarks Fork and Shoshone study. And that's way out of my realm of responsibility, but I think it is important for everyone to work together on these things, especially considering that.
Yeah. Any other comments or questions?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to address a question to Commissioner Craig, just based on his knowledge of the area. If Commissioner Craig, if you were to look at both proposal B and A in relation to your comments about the watershed study and also relation to Mr. Kerr's comments about, what some of them might be better suited for level 1 or 2, could you pick which one you think could be more valuable to that area and which one might be more duplicating what we're doing in the watershed study that's been approved?
It'd be pretty difficult for me to choose one over the other because I think there's quite a bit of difference in the two in reality. One specifically is probably more applicable. The information that's gathered is going to be applicable to Willwood Dam, but also this would be important statewide, or that's the hope, if I understand correctly. So, and the other one is pretty specific to Willwood Dam. Now, I'm pretty practical and all of us get tunnel vision in our little area of where we live. So to me, it's really important to protect our irrigators that are served by the Willwood Dam and to be careful of what we do that would jeopardize delivery of their irrigation water, so to speak. So it's hard for me to say one or two.
Questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Samadon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Kerr, I remember being, and when I was in the legislature, they had some students, Wayne Allen specifically came over and they had done some research on, not that I don't like number E, I do because it's in our area, but they did some research and they said that the problem was that it was very expensive because of all the water to get to the lithium and that it was so much cheaper to get the lithium from South America at this point. And that was their big concern. And I don't know that that was I can't, I don't think it was they were undergraduate students at the time. So I just was trying to, is that part of this ongoing one that's still going on at the University of Wyoming, or was that a separate project?
I'm not familiar with exactly what the particular project you're referring to is. I do know, in the news and things that are brought up about the importance of lithium, it's brought up about Brazil, brought up about Nevada, a recent supply in California that was stated it may be the largest find for lithium in the entire country. And then we have Wyoming. I mean, we're players in the game, and it's important to have that information. The project that's going on now is a new project that was recently funded. So I don't believe it would be tied to what you're talking about.
Chairman, I may be able to clarify that. I know the Sweetwater County investigated this topic of lithium and rare earth minerals. And we received response back from the Wyoming Geological Survey. And they wrote us a letter back. And their concern was at the time, and this was 2017, is that certainly South America is called the Lithium Triangle, and Australia, there's other places that produce tremendous amounts of lithium, which is processed in China. But the Wyoming supply was minuscule, and it was, the technology at that time to get it out of solution was not known and well studied. That, of course, that's what the purpose is right now, is to, let's look more at that, and let's understand how to take lithium out of solution. But yes, there has been in the past studies published by the Wyoming Geological Survey on this, and but sounds like there's studies now that are going to take this beyond and look at the solution mining. And I guess to reiterate, it's very important for the state, and and I guess maybe we need a little bit more discussion on how if we do fund item E, how that can dovetail with the work already being done by the university. That, I guess that's my outstanding question on that.
Mr. Hicks.
off that, we may have the same opportunity. Several potential sites. Technology. May not be lithium and another. I think this is, maybe something. Getting at something that could be very. Also, bring us back. That would be my. I look back through this, I wouldn't disagree that probably B and D or. B, D, and E. Maybe.
Thank you. I guess we could move forward. Do we have to select the three? Is that how that works, Director Gebhardt?
That is correct. You would
Sure.
select.
I would probably propose a motion then to accept D, B, and E, and then let's select water. Enjoy moving it through or cutting it up.
Mr. Chairman, I'll second that motion.
It's been made by Commissioner Kaylee to accept D, B, and E. Not necessarily in any order. And seconded by Commissioner Cott. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Thank you. Thank you, Greg, for your comments.
Chairman, just some quick math and we will confirm this number, but what you guys just approved would amount to an amount of $507,819. And that would go into the planning bill as a proposed amendment. So under tab XYZ again. This proposal would insert an amendment on page 2 on line 26. And then that would give us a new total that I don't have at this time, but we would check my math and then insert a new total as part of this recommendation.
Mr. Gebhardt, then do we need to have a motion to approve the planning bill as amended?
Chairman, yeah, if it's okay, I'll briefly go through the rest of it, and then at the end, that amendment would be incorporated in that motion. And then the motion would be accept the planning bill as amended.
$107, you said?
$507,819. I could be wrong. We will check that.
Moving on here, let's see.
Through the planning bill very quickly.
Okay, sounds great.
Section 2 is very similar to section 1. This will be the level 2 feasibility studies under water development account 1 or the new development account. And at the bottom of page 3, you'll see what those projects are. The first one is the cloud seeding operations hydrologic assessment, Medicine Bow, Sierra Madre Mountain. Again, that's the state-sponsored project to try to better identify the effects of cloud seeding. We had that discussion, I believe, in November when we brought that recommendation to you. The next one on line 25, that's the Fontenelle Reservoir Storage Project. That's the one we discussed yesterday. This is a new recommendation. And I believe that by accepting this bill, then you've accepted the recommendation. Then we've got the LaGrange groundwater supply and improvements and the Pavilion groundwater supply project. So the total appropriation under this section is $3,412,000. Mr. Chairman, the next section then will be the level 1 under the rehab account. And at the bottom, we've got 2 projects, the critical aging irrigation infrastructure assessment and the West Afton Nield String master plan. So the total under this section is $588,000. Mr. Chairman, under section 4 on page 5, this would be the level 2 for the rehab account. And we've got 1 project, that's the Dowland Diversion Rehabilitation for $110,000 under this section. Section 5, Mr. Chairman, is our biennial funding for the Office of Water Programs. This is continuation of what we've done historically. This funds 2 years for the Office of Water Programs. The biennial amount for that is $175,000. So they use about half of that each year. Section 6, Mr. Chairman, is amendments to previous planning bills. And the amendment for this one is the Little Wind River Storage. And that we had the discussions on that. That's adding $150,000 to that ongoing study. And the other thing that this amendment does is it extends the reversion date of the Little Wind River Storage, extends that out to 2027. And why we were doing this, we included the West Fork Reservoir Phase 3 studies to extend that reversion date as well. So that's incorporated in this amendment. And then section 7 of this bill just defines when this bill is effective. And I believe it is effective upon the governor's signature. Mr. Chairman, that is the planning bill presented.
Any other questions or comments for Director Gilbart? We have to make a motion to approve the amendments.
The planning bill
Except
should be to approve as amended.
Okay.
I would move to accept the planning bill as amended.
Made to accept the bill as amended by Commissioner Sami Dalton, seconded by Commissioner Yankee. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Thank you. Director Gilbart. We'll take a 10-minute break. We'll come back at what time is yours?
Right now. 12 right now.
Okay, 10:22. Thank
you, Mr. Chair. I'll very briefly walk you through the template of the construction bill. And I say that because all of the projects in the construction bill have been vetted through our process. We've been talking about them for the last several meetings, and the projects that are in the bill are the ones that came out of that process. And so under tab A, the second A in your notebook is the beginning of the construction bill. And again, the spreadsheet on the first page provides a list of all the projects, the accounts, the terms. The terms is a different column in this spreadsheet than the previous one we just discussed. And what's in the terms is whether it's a 67% grant, if there's a grant loan portion or materials only, or some other funding split. So with that, I'll just kind of, we'll look at the bill again on page 1. Defines what the bill is, the name and the sponsor. And then on page 2 at line 15. So line 7 through 13, basically what that does is it brings in general provisions that have already been codified in statute 99 and brings those into and applies them to all of this bill. So that's essentially standard language that is in all the construction bills throughout time. So starting on line 15 of page 2, these are the level 3 construction projects from new development, so water development account 1. And again, we start with the cloud seeding in the Medicine Bow Sierra Mountain Range. Total budget $873,490. On line 21, asks for the appropriation in the amount of $823,490. And then we get into line 6 on page 4. These are special conditions that are associated with this appropriation. The first one is that we will acquire funding from Wyoming water users. The next one down, paragraph B, that authorizes to enter into contracts with Colorado for that portion of the program. And then the next project is the Wind River, the ground-based cloud seeding project. And again, on page 5, total budget on line 10 is $844,580. The appropriation on line 15, $316,000. Reversion date on line 18 of 2024. Then we get into special conditions on line 22. We can participate at a rate up to 37%. The next special condition states that we acquire funding commitments from Colorado River Basin users. The next one down is it's an ongoing authorization that if the project is to cancel, that we can use the balance of funds remaining to remove the ground-based generators. That's kind of like our bond that we can take down what we have out there. Then we get into the next project, and I'll step through this because this is a standard format, even though I don't know that we need to talk about all the projects, but this is a standard format for all the projects. So it starts on line 15, it names the project, 17, it names the sponsor. Line 20, it's the project purpose. This particular one is municipal rural domestic water supply. The next paragraph, this is the project description. So for this particular one, it's the design and construction of water transmission pipelines, structures, and appurtenances necessary. Then we get down into line 6, that defines the project budget. Then line 9, this describes the grant amount of that. And so for most of these are 67% grants. So 67% of the project total, that amount is defined on lines 13 through 15, and then the 67%. And then the next portion down, so that defines project grant. Then the next section, starting on line 18, that defines the appropriation. So what is being given to the commission to spend? This one, the appropriation matches the project grant. When we get into some of the other projects where we have a grant loan, then the appropriation will match the project budget and not the grant. So that tells us the money we're getting, they've got the total project amount, but sometimes the sponsor will find their own funding. And so we don't need to appropriate up to the budget amount. So that would be the difference as we go through these projects in the bill. So I would step back. So I just wanted to show you how that is set up in the bill. And I would step back to the spreadsheet to talk about, unless you guys want to go through the bill, we can certainly do that. But this table lists all of the projects that are in there. Out that yesterday we had some conversations about some of the things that were tweaked between what you saw as recommendations and what ultimately ended up in the construction bill. And that was the Deaver Irrigation District rehab. Again, that was a rounding correction. So the correct number is in the bill, and a new recommendation to match that is in this notebook as well. So that's the case for Deaver Irrigation District and the Dry Creek Irrigation District pipeline replacement. Northwest Rural Water System Improvements had a rounding correction. And then the other thing that we did, the small water project program rehab, we removed the contingent on the transfer language from that portion. The reason we did that is because we tagged the Goshen Irrigation District tunnel rehab with that. So let's go to that portion. Goshen is a little different format than some of these other ones. And let me find the page number. So on page 23 is where Goshen starts. The meat of it is actually on page 24. So what we've done with this project is we have a total project budget of 2.35 million. We've had some discussions about the 49% in Wyoming, 51% split of the total project. So what we've done after the November meeting is for the 49%, we have established a 67-33% grant loan mix. So that defines a grant amount of $771,505 of the total 2.35 million. That's 67% of 49% of that total project budget. So if you think about, we're going to split 49% pool and a 51% pool. The 49%, our funding is 67-33. So starting on page 24, line 16, that describes the grant portion. And that is based on 67% of the 49. The next section then is the first project loan component. And that is 33% of the 49. Then on on line 20 is the second loan. And that is 100% loan for the 51. And that was at the desire of the commission, and the discussion with Select Water in August, or November, excuse me. So yesterday we had some discussion on the language and when the interest on these loans would start accruing. It's in here, starting on line 14 of page 25. For a term of 20 years from the date the commission determines that the project benefits accrue to the sponsor. It's my understanding, and I've talked to the AG, we believe that this language allows the commission to determine that the project benefits accrue at the completion of the design. Because that is what the project is. The project is defined as the design through pre-construction. So the language that we have in here, I told you that I'd bring additional language if we thought we needed it. I do not believe we need it. I think we have the latitude that we need to accomplish what we want to accomplish with the way it's written. So my suggestion would be to leave it the way it's written. And then the other kind of nuances, unless you want to go through the bill in each project, material only, we have some of those that are slightly different. That would be for 100% of the material costs, and then they provide the engineering and construction. Typical materials only. Those are a little bit different. And then under section 2, starting on page 33, these are amendments. Nope, I apologize. Yes, they are, sorry. So what this section of the bill does is it goes back and modifies previous legislation, previous statutes, and changes whatever we're trying to change. So on page 34, for example, the Green River, Rock Springs, Sweetwater County Raw Water Reservoir, we're modifying the reversion date. So that whole section there just modifies the reversion date. The same with the Laramie Northside Tank, that's an amendment for the reversion date. Then we get into page 35, line 7. This is the Small Water Development Projects 2014. This was the original appropriation for the small water account 1 projects. And the way that legislation was written, it has just carried forward. Each time we amend it, it adds to that. So the original appropriation was established in 2014, and then we just keep amending more money into that original appropriation. And that's what we've done here. You will notice that the total project budget is essentially double of what the appropriation is. And that goes back to the concept that we will fund 50% of the project. So then we estimate that the total project budget's double that. So we appropriate 50%. So on the project grant, starting on line 15, this is really where the appropriation is. And what this is saying is we are increasing the last amended amount by $1 million. So the small water for new development, we're adding $1 million to that. It's a long way to get there to just to say we're adding $1 million to the small water new development. On the next page, the same thing for the rehab small water projects, we're adding $50,000. And that falls under the appropriation. That math equates to an addition of $500,000. Then we get to page 38. These are time extensions only. Broken Wheel, time extension of a year. Gillette Regional, 2-year time extension. And the Middle Piney is a 2-year time extension. Then we get to Laramie Valley Diversion Structure 2020 project. You'll remember we increased the budget for that project. So ultimately, what this section does is add $700,000 to that project. Then we get to page 41, line 14. This is a sponsored contingency fund. This is the sponsored contingency fund for account 3. We had the discussion yesterday. In the bill as written, we are adding $10 million. That's what we discussed in November. Yesterday, we had some discussion. Do we desire to increase that? And Director Mead's recommendation was to increase that by another $10 million. So if the commission chooses to, then what would change is on line 20, rather than saying $20 million, that will change to a total project budget of $30 million, which adds $20 million to the original appropriation. And on line 42, under the appropriation, that would change to $30 million as well. And then section 3 of this bill, this covers the transfer from water development account 1 to water development account 2. And that transfer amount is $7 million. Then section 4 defines the effective date of the law. That determines if it passes through legislature and then when the governor signs it. So there's only a couple things going on there. Is the motion would be to either approve the bill as it is, or if we choose to amend it and add another $10 million in the count 3 contingency, then it would be to make that amendment and approve the amended bill. And then I would open it up for any discussion or questions you may have for me.
Any questions or comments?
I have a question for Director Gebhardt. It refers to what we just discussed, Brandon, about adding the extra 10 million on page 42, where it says unexpended funds appropriated under this subsection shall revert to water development account 3 on July 1st, 2030. Is there any reason for that particular date, or is it standard to go out a certain amount of years? We didn't really discuss that yesterday as far as date that would revert. So I'm just curious about that.
Mr. Chairman, I don't remember what year this account was established, but at that time, we just arbitrarily chose a number or a date far enough out that would protect that account and allow us to be flexible. So I don't suggest moving that date now. Really what this does though is it provides the direction of where any unspent money will go at the end of the term. So it goes back into account 2 and not somewhere else, or account 3, excuse me, not somewhere else. What's that?
You scared me when you said that. Account 2. Any questions or comments for Director Gebhardt? Right here, any motion?
Chairman, I will move, we approve the construction bill amending adding another 10 million to the sponsored contingency fund in account 3.
Was moved by Commissioner Little to approve with amendment to add 10 million to the contingency fund. Add an additional 10 million, sorry, excuse me,
Total of 20 million.
Total of 20 million, yes.
10 million. And Commissioner Yankee has seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Sorry about that, Commissioner Little. I skipped over it. Director Gebhardt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One other item for action. We discussed sponsor contingency request. Bill can answer questions. Bighorn Basin Joint Powers Board sponsor contingency. Bill, do you want to just summarize what that request is again for the commission and this, and what account that's out of?
Chairman, Commissioners, Bill Brewer, the Deputy Director of Construction for the office. As we went over yesterday, we have a request in for contingency funds. This is part of the Bighorn Regional System, and this is to tie in another community into that regional system, and it would be the town of Burlington. Last fall, when the engineer was finishing up design and doing their engineer's cost estimate based on current prices for piping, they had estimated that the project would possibly be over budget. We advised them to schedule the bidding date around a commission. Followed that advice and set the bid date for January 11th. They received 7 bids from responsive contractors. The low bid was slightly under the engineer's estimate, but the engineer's estimate was right in with the low bid, so it looks like it was a good engineer's estimate. So at this time, they are short of funding. They are also requesting funds from rural development to cover the project, plus have 5% contingency within that. But from the Water Development Commission, they are requesting a $750,000 grant from the sponsors contingency fund to make up the shortfall in their funding.
Have any questions or comments?
The Water Development staff recommends the Wyoming Water Development Commission authorize the use of $750,000 from the Water Development Account 1 Sponsors Contingency Fund for the Bighorn Regional Transmission 2020 project, and approve the amendment to the project, or approve an amendment to the project agreement to match the sponsors funds already in place and additional funds being requested from rural development. The Water Development Office will continue to fund at 67% of eligible expenses, and the sponsor will be responsible for 33% of the.
Motion?
Chairman, so moved as stated. I cannot repeat what that was, but that was well done. Oh, it's there. Okay.
Commissioner Cott as to approve as stated. Seconded by Commissioner Kaylee. All in favor, say aye. Oh, Director Gilbert.
Chairman, before you vote, I just wanted to point out that we do not have the document in front of us. And I don't know that we need a different amendment. You're going to approve it, but you have not seen the document. So you're, with your approval, you're authorizing the secretary and the president to sign the document when it goes through its proper reviews with the AG's office. Correct, Bill? Correct.
Include that in our motion.
I don't believe so. I think that we're okay just providing the recommendation as it was presented.
Okay.
It's not here for signature yet.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Thank you. Now, what is that last one? Director Gephardt?
The next item is just some general discussions. Barry is here to talk to you about the state-sponsored projects that are in this bill and how we would proceed or with our consultant selection and when that would start. And then we also want to have a discussion about the August meeting, the tour, and where that will be. And Barry will help that conversation as well.
Thank you. Barry?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. The planning bill, which you just approved, which goes to select water tomorrow. In that bill, there are two projects which are state-sponsored projects, in that they did not go through the entire consultant selection process. I think most of you participated in that. For the rest of those projects, that if you remember, that started way back with applications of March last year. And we went through statements of interest, statements of qualification. We went through RFPs, proposals, interviews in October. And then, of course, the resulting winning firm with the budget is what was hardwired into the planning bill, which you just approved. So that's the majority of the projects, but there are two projects that are what we call state-sponsored that entered into the process in November at our Casper meeting. And those two projects, which we've already discussed, were the cloud seeding operational hydrologic assessment for the Medbo Sierra Madres. That's a level 2 feasibility study with a $300,000 recommended appropriation. And the other one was the critical aging infrastructure, irrigation infrastructure assessment. That's level 1 at $500,000. Obviously, they're kind of coming in late to the game because it's state sponsored. We brought them in November. We've discussed those. They're in the bill, but to kind of play catch up now, such that we can issue notice to proceed if approved by the. We would have a project off and running, late spring, early summer. That having been said, what was proposed, we will start consultant selection next month. And that would involve statements of interest, statements of qualification. There'd be an accelerated timeline here. We do that in February. During the month of March, we would issue the RFP. Now, one thing critical here, we will not be issuing the RFP until after we get out of the legislature. For sure, we know we have the project and the funding, so that at this point, the consultants can express interest in the project, but they won't be actually developing proposals until we're out of the legislature and we know we have the funding for the projects. So that would be in March. Proposals will be due in April, and then in May, in conjunction with our commission meeting that we have in May, middle of May, we'd be doing interviews, and we probably task a couple of commissioners to help us with some of those interviews. So that's kind of the timeline. It's accelerated. It's kind of like the old process, the way we used to do business, that while we were in the legislature, we were starting the consultant selection process such that when we get out of the legislature, we're all the way halfway through the consultant selection process. So that's kind of what's, but I wanted to let you know when you start seeing things being released, it's relative to these two state-sponsored projects. A little bit of catch up here.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Barry? Gebhardt?
Chairman, the next item is a discussion on the desire to have an August meeting tour. And Barry, I think you had some conversations, or did Jason have some conversations with? Had some conversations with Representative Simpson. He's asked to consider going to Star Valley area for the August tour. But wanted to open it up for discussion, and that was a request made for the August meeting tour. So, and then under tab B of the second B of the project notebook provides a history of where the past August tours have been, if that plays into it. Last time. So the last time it was in that area was in 2008, and it has moved around quite a bit since then. So. Again, though, this is your meeting, so.
Do you have any suggestions or comments?
I think probably a lot of projects and a lot of
I wouldn't mind going over there then, though. Any other comments, suggestions? Well, how about a motion? We need a motion?
I don't think we need a motion. I will say, though, that we looked into when the Lincoln County Fair is. I guess that is a big stress on motel rooms and eating establishments. So we would want to schedule around that. And so the Lincoln County Fair is August 7th through the 13th. So I don't know if we wanted to find a date right now, but tentatively,
Phone isn't.
the second tab C, we have the meeting schedule, and we're currently slated for August 9th through the 11th. So that would be right in the middle of the Lincoln County Fair. So we would have to adjust those dates if we wanted to have a place to stay. I did ask Representative Simpson if he had enough room in his house for all of us to stay if motels were an issue, and he hemmed and hawed a little bit, so I took that as no. So I would think that we could either go the week before or the week after.
But I mean, for myself would be the week after. We're still kind of haying at it. No, okay. I think we'll all be haying, it's gonna catching up at the end there.
11th works.
Wise to have Representative Simpson get with the director and try to dial in a time.
Okay, we can certainly talk to Mr. Simpson, but he just said to make sure to exclude the 7th through the 13th.
Sounds good to me.
So I guess what I hear is maybe tentatively scheduled for the following week. Perhaps a Tuesday through Thursday of the following week.
What dates are those again?
August 16th through the 18th.
Oh, we will tentatively schedule the August 16th through the 18th in the Star Valley area. And we'll start making those arrangements.
Thank you. Now we're down to the, what is it? Your meeting schedule?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we should be open right there. The next meeting, we've got select water meeting tomorrow. And that is in the basement of the Capitol complex. Senator Hicks, do you remember what room that is? 5? I think it's room 5. And that's tomorrow. And then the next water development meeting is just water development, March 15th and 16th. And that would be here in Cheyenne. And we're getting your ballots ready because that's when we typically elect new officers.
The meeting starts tomorrow. Is it at 8:30?
8 o'clock? 8 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Mr. Chairman.
I think it's Jason.
And if you're trying to say something, we can't hardly hear you. So
Yeah, this is Jason. The schedule I have says 8:30 for tomorrow morning, but I can double check that real quick on the website.
Ready.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
you're bringing donuts at 8? I heard.
Throw those in my truck. All right, I guess we're to the point where we adjourn, so.
Second.
Adjourned by Commissioner Kaylee, seconded by Commissioner Little. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Adjournment. Thank you all for coming. And thank you all for attending that was online and on the phone call.